Nolan Graye stood stiff-backed beneath the buzzing overhead lights of the alien customs bay, his boots planted squarely on the glossy floor. Beside him, tethered by a short, reinforced lead, sat his German shepherd, Brutus. The dog's ears twitched at the whirring of scanning drones overhead, but otherwise he sat calmly, tongue lolling out the side of his mouth. A few meters ahead, a towering, lavender-hued alien with a translucent crest above its eyes studied a holopad. Its name tag read, Veterinary Inspector Ketch. Ketch squinted at the screen, then slowly tilted his gaze toward Brutus. "This entity is unsuitable for planetary entry," Ketch announced in a gravelly tone. "Aggression markers detected. Classification feral beast." Nolan blinked. "Excuse me?" Ketch tapped the screen with a long, jointless finger. "Elevated muscular tension in thoracic limbs. Iris dilation indicates predatory focus. Salivary drip rate is inconsistent with domestication norms. Feral." Brutus, as if on cue, yawned loudly and flopped onto his side, tail thumping once against Nolan's boot. "He's a trained good boy," Nolan said, kneeling to scratch Brutus behind the ear. "Certified service dog. He's not feral, he's just alert." Ketch narrowed his eyes. "This creature's physiology is optimized for pursuit and violent subdual. We cannot allow it through without containment protocols." "I've got his documents," Nolan said, reaching into his jacket and pulling out a folded dossier. "Behavioral assessments, immunization records, and my own handler certification, issued by Earth's Interstellar Companion Registry. You can scan it." Ketch accepted the papers with two hands and slid them into a reader. Blue light flickered across the data, then turned red. "Unacceptable," Ketch muttered. "Earth certification protocols are lenient. Your species tolerates a disturbingly high threshold for aggression." "You're not wrong," Nolan muttered under his breath. "What was that?" "I said Brutus has been in 12 planetary systems and never bit anyone. He's trained to assist me during high-stress incidents. He's not a threat." Ketch's crest darkened. "That remains to be determined." Two guards in pale armor stepped forward, weapons holstered but unmistakably present. Brutus rose slowly, positioning himself between them and Nolan. The guards stiffened. "Easy," Nolan said, placing a hand on Brutus's neck. The dog relaxed slightly. "We will conduct a behavioral analysis," Ketch said. "You and the creature will remain in the assessment wing. Any sign of aggression will result in immediate containment and potential euthanization." Nolan's jaw clenched. "You touch him, and I swear." "Please," Ketch interrupted, "do not threaten an official inspector." Nolan exhaled sharply. Brutus huffed beside him. They were escorted down a long corridor lit by pulsating floor panels. Doors lined the hall, each bearing strange glyphs. Eventually, they were led into a glass-walled chamber where a variety of alien scanners hovered above padded seating. A squat, lime-colored alien entered from the opposite side. Its limbs moved like a crab's, though it wore a lab coat 2 sizes too big. "Dr. Tal," it introduced itself. "Behavioral analyst." Brutus sat obediently while Dr. Tal circled him, occasionally making odd chirps of approval or dismay. Nolan watched silently, arms crossed. "His ears are expressive," Tal muttered. "Are those normal?" "They're supposed to move like that," Nolan said. "And the tail?" "Also normal." Tal reached forward with a scanner wand. Brutus's eyes followed it closely, but he didn't move. Tal muttered. "Let's see how he reacts to stress simulation." Nolan stepped forward. "Wait, what kind of simulation?" Before Tal could answer, a panel in the wall slid open, and a mechanical drone zipped out, emitting a loud, high-pitched whine. It swooped toward Brutus. Brutus leapt up, barked once, and stood in a defensive posture. He didn't lunge. He didn't bite. He simply stood between Nolan and the drone, hackles raised, barking again. Tal made a strange squealing sound and shrank back. "That's it," Nolan said. "You triggered a threat display. Of course he's reacting. He's not attacking anyone." Tal tapped rapidly on a console. The drone retreated. Ketchy's voice came through a speaker. "Aggression confirmed. Subject must be restrained." No, Nolan snapped. You're misreading him. He's trained to protect me. That drone came at us. He did exactly what he's supposed to do. Your species' definition of trained is alarmingly broad, said Ketch. Your species' definition of feral is alarmingly narrow, Nolan shot back. Stahl hesitated. Perhaps we conduct a field test, controlled environment, observe the creature in action. Ketch's sigh was audible. You want to release the beast on our station? With supervision, Tal added hastily. Ketch relented. One trial, any incident, and the creature is removed immediately. 2 hours later, Nolan stood in a simulated urban environment built within the station's training dome. The air smelled faintly metallic. Brutus padded beside him, alert but calm. Tal and 3 other aliens observed from a raised platform. Scenario begins now, a voice announced. A mechanical figure emerged from behind a pillar, holding a blunt weapon. It marched toward Nolan at a brisk pace. Brutus barked once and sat. The figure came closer. Brutus stood, positioned himself between Nolan and the figure, but made no move to bite. Good boy, Nolan murmured. The figure swung its weapon gently toward Nolan's shoulder. Brutus snapped his jaws in the air, a warning, then barked twice. Disengage, Nolan said. Brutus stepped back. The figure froze. The trial ended. Tal scribbled something quickly. Ketch looked displeased. That was textbook protective behavior, Nolan said. He did not attack, Tal agreed. A lesser animal would have bitten. This dog exercised restraint. Ketch was silent for a long moment. We will confer. Nolan sat on a bench outside the observation dome, Brutus's head resting on his thigh. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Finally, Ketch emerged alone. The dog may enter the station, he said reluctantly, but he will be subject to monitoring. Nolan stood. Fine, but no more tests. Ketch nodded, agreed. Nolan turned to Brutus. You did good, buddy, real good. Brutus wagged his tail once, then leaned into Nolan's side. The moment didn't last long. As they exited the assessment wing, a klaxon blared across the station. Containment breach in Sector 12, a voice called. All personnel secure positions. Ketch's crest flared. We must return you to the civilian zone. No time, Nolan said. What's in Sector 12? Tal ran up behind them. Experimental fauna. One escaped. Dangerous. Ketch's eyes flicked to Brutus. He is not authorized for security operations. He doesn't need to be, Nolan said. He's already on alert. Sure enough, Brutus had lowered into a crouch, ears tracking the distant sounds reverberating through the corridor. Ketch looked torn. Very well, but you assume responsibility. I always do, Nolan unclipped Brutus's lead. Let's go. They followed the sound of panicked footsteps and overturned equipment. A group of engineers had barricaded themselves behind a security door, shouting about something large and fast. Brutus sniffed the air, then bolted down a side corridor. Brutus, Nolan called, sprinting after him. Around a corner they found the creature. It was twice Brutus's size, with razor limbs and glistening scales. It charged. Brutus didn't hesitate. He lunged not at the creature's head, but at its flank, forcing it to veer sideways. Nolan raised his sidearm and fired a stun burst. The creature shrieked, staggered, and collapsed. Brutus stood over it, barking triumphantly. Tal arrived moments later, gasping. Unbelievable! Ketch's voice came through Nolan's comm. Status? Threat neutralized, Nolan said. By the feral beast. There was a long pause. Understood, Ketch replied. Later that day, Brutus received official clearance as a security adjunct. Tal personally issued the badge. Nolan clipped it to Brutus's collar. Told you he's a trained good boy. Brutus wagged his tail once, then lay down to nap in the middle of the customs bay, snoring softly. Brutus's new badge, a small hexagonal tag that blinked blue every few seconds, clinked softly against his collar as he padded beside Nolan through the upper concourse of Terminal Ring C. The air smelled faintly of synthetic citrus and ozone. Above them, a wide-paneled viewport revealed the edge of a nearby ice moon, its surface fractured by glowing fault lines. A trio of insectoid engineers scurried past, giving Brutus a wide berth. One of them chirped in its throat and muttered something Nolan didn't catch. "Still making friends, huh?" Nolan said. Brutus flicked an ear but kept walking. They were en route to a medical checkpoint. After the Sector 12 breach, the station's administration had mandated a full decontamination and health screening for anyone involved. Nolan had argued that he and Brutus were fine. He'd suffered nothing worse than a bruised shoulder. But the administration insisted, and arguing with a station AI was like trying to reason with a lamp post. The clinic was located past a biometric gateway manned by a pair of centaur-shaped guards. Their torsos were humanoid, but their lower halves moved like six-legged camels. One of them squinted at Brutus. "No unauthorized quadrupeds allowed past screening. Line 7. "He's cleared," Nolan said, tapping his wristband against the scanner. "Security adjunct designation." The guard paused, then squinted at the badge swinging from Brutus's neck. The guard murmured, stepping aside. "Proceed. But if he defecates, you clean it." "I wasn't planning to outsource that," Nolan muttered. Inside the clinic, the lighting dimmed to a soft yellow. The walls pulsed gently, likely to calm species with light sensitivity. Brutus sniffed a nearby planter filled with blue moss, then sneezed. A tall, eel-skinned alien behind the reception desk looked up from its console. "Handler Graye? That's me. Medical Officer Yeltri will see you in Exam Pod 3. Accompanying entity must remain still during the scan." "Try telling him that," Nolan said. Yeltri was already waiting when they entered. Her frame resembled a stretched-out praying mantis, but her eyes were oddly warm. She gestured to the central platform with a clawed hand. "Please remove your upper garments and place them in the sterile bin." Nolan peeled off his jacket and undershirt, revealing a faint bruise along his rib cage. Brutus sat beside the platform, watching Yeltri with mild curiosity. Yeltri's eyes flicked to the dog. "I've never scanned a Terran canine before. Is it safe to approach it from behind?" "Not unless you want a surprise dental consult," Nolan said. "Stick to the front." "I see." She pulled a scanning wand from the wall and waved it down Nolan's torso. "You have a soft tissue contusion along the 7th costal arch, no fracture. I'll apply a dermal stim to reduce inflammation." "Thanks. I've had worse." Yeltri hummed. "Your species casually accumulates injury data like it's a sport." Nolan grinned. "Where I'm from, it kind of is." While the stim device buzzed gently over his ribs, Yeltri turned her attention to Brutus. "May I?" "Go ahead. Just don't aim anything flashy at his eyes." She knelt awkwardly, bringing the scanner near Brutus's chest. He sniffed it, then resumed his patient stare. "Pulses steady, respiratory rhythm normal, elevated cortisol but within tolerance." "Doesn't like clinics." Yelter nodded. "Neither do I." Brutus suddenly tensed. His head swiveled toward the corridor outside. A low growl rippled from his throat. Nolan jumped down from the platform. "What's wrong?" Before Yeltri could ask, a shrill alarm sounded from the corridor. The walls flashed amber. "Containment breach," said the room's intercom. "Cryochamber disruption in Medbay 7. Quarantine doors failing." Yeltri's face paled, at least Nolan assumed it did. Her skin turned slightly translucent. "I need to seal this room," she said, moving toward the door panel. "Too late," Nolan said. Brutus was already at full alert, facing the hallway with bared teeth. The door irised open before Yeltri could engage the lock. A blur of white and gray shot into view, a creature roughly the size of a large wolf, but with skin like cracked porcelain and too many joints in its legs. It skidded into the clinic on hooked claws, knocking over a biocart. Brutus launched forward before Nolan could speak. The two collided mid-leap. The impact sent them tumbling into a supply shelf. Vials shattered. The creature screamed a high, stabbing sound that made Nolan's ears ring. Brutus didn't flinch. He pivoted, slammed the thing to the floor with his shoulder, and locked his jaws around its forearm. Yelty ducked behind the scanning platform. That's a Category 4 cryophage. Its saliva carries necrotic enzymes. Nolan grabbed a containment rod from the wall and jammed it between the creature's jaws. Brutus released on instinct, backing up just as the rod crackled with blue plasma. The phage is not supposed to be mobile outside cryo, Yeltri said, scrambling to her feet. It shouldn't even be alive in this temperature range. Tell that to the busted door, Nolan said. The creature thrashed once more, then collapsed as backup responders flooded the corridor. Two heavy armored figures entered and fired restraint tethers. The phage writhed briefly, then went still. Brutus stood panting, foam flecking the corners of his mouth. Nolan knelt beside him. You good? Brutus licked his nose and sat heavily. Yeltri emerged cautiously. He bit it, only briefly. We'll need to flush his mouth, and yours if any fluid contacted you. I didn't kiss it, if that's what you mean. Yeltri turned toward the responders. Bring a decontamination rig in here, now. An hour later, Nolan sat shirtless in a chemical rinse chamber, arms raised as a mist of yellow vapor hissed around him. Brutus was in the adjacent stall, looking deeply unimpressed, while a gentle spray bathed his muzzle. The technician, a squat avian with a respirator, eyed Nolan through the glass. You are aware, the tech said, that phages liquefy soft tissue. Appreciate the bedtime story? Your dog's lucky, he latched onto a non-venom gland. Yeah, well, Nolan said. He's got a sixth sense for not dying. After the rinse, Brutus shook violently, drenching the floor. A second technician groaned and slipped. Sorry, Nolan said. He doesn't like being damp. They were cleared 2 hours later, but only after blood draws, nasal swabs, and one very intrusive digestive scan. Brutus endured it all with a stoicism that made the staff increasingly uncomfortable. Back in the lobby, Yeltri handed Nolan a data. Official report. You'll need to sign. He scrawled his name with a finger. So, what exactly was that thing doing in Medbay 7? Yeltri hesitated. It escaped during a genetics trial. We were studying dormant viral inheritance. It shouldn't have had motor function. Something tells me you're not going to publish that result. No, she agreed. Brutus lay at Nolan's feet, gnawing a synthetic chew they gave him as a thank you. It squeaked every time he bit down. A passing reptilian nurse flinched with each squeal. Can I take him now? Nolan asked. Yeltri nodded. I'll update his file with pathogen resistance markers. He may qualify for biohazard partner status. Nolan raised an eyebrow. That's a real thing? On this station it is now. They exited the clinic into a corridor that smelled faintly of sterilized plastic. Brutus trotted ahead, tail swinging like a pendulum. Come on, Nolan said. I think you earned a steak cube or 3. Brutus barked once. Behind them the clinic's doors hissed shut. Inside, Yeltri was already logging a priority requisition for reinforced cryolocks. She paused halfway through and added a new entry. Request for canine behavioral consultancy, Terran handler preferred. If nothing else, she thought, they had just discovered a new standard for containment breach response. And it came with a tail. By the third day, Nolan had memorized the layout of the station's upper sectors better than his own apartment back on Earth. That was mostly because his apartment didn't need a map with rotating gravity indicators and multilingual hazard icons just to get to the coffee replicator. Also, it didn't have a debriefing chamber staffed by a chlorophyll-skinned alien who insisted on documenting every blink. Please describe the immediate sequence of your dog's engagement with the cryophagic entity, said the debriefer, seated behind what looked like a desk constructed from pressed kelp strands. Nolan leaned back in the curved seat, arms folded. Again? Yes. The last retelling was from the perspective of the recovery team. This must be from yours. Brutus lay curled on a heat pad next to him, eyes half-lidded but awake. The heat lamp above him glowed faintly orange, tuned to Terran canine thermal preference. It was the only concession Nolan had insisted on. He saw it, he moved, he pinned it. End of story, Nolan said. Was there a specific vocal command issued? No, he doesn't wait for permission when something's coming at me with teeth. The debriefer tapped a ridged stylus against her logbook. So he acted independently. No, he acted with initiative. That's different. She paused, then stood. Evaluation complete. You are cleared for reintegration into open station zones. So I can get back to my quarters? You may return to your temporary housing unit, yes. Great, because I've been sleeping on a couch shaped like a question mark. 2 hours later, Nolan was back in the housing wing, unpacking a sealed nutrient crate while Brutus sniffed suspiciously at the corner of the delivery panel. The crate contained 3 vacuum-sealed protein trays, a bottle of water flavored like ambient citrus, and 1 small packet labeled recreational sustenance. Crunchy. Brutus watched Nolan peel it open with a look of intense suspicion. Don't worry, Nolan said. You're not eating this one. Brutus gruffed softly and went back to his spot under the table. The piece lasted about 20 minutes before Nolan's comm band chirped. He almost didn't answer. Then he saw the sender ID. Yeltri Med. He pressed the receive button. Graye, I'm requesting your presence in Medical Annex 4. Non-emergency, but immediate. What's this about? You'll see when you get here. He glanced at Brutus. You up for another field trip? Brutus stood and stretched without waiting for the leash. Annex 4 was quieter than the main clinic. The walls were darker and the lighting came only from embedded floor strips. Inside, Yeltri stood beside a large, transparent enclosure containing what looked like a miniature forest of glowing reeds. There's something I want you to see, she said. Nolan raised an eyebrow. If this is another containment hazard, you better have better doors. No hazards, she said, just this. From behind the reeds, a small creature emerged. It looked vaguely like a fox, made of overlapping leaves. Its eyes were enormous and mirrored. It stepped with exaggerated care, sniffing at the edges of its enclosure. It's called a glasson, herbivore, native to the lower atmosphere layers of Yelvith 4, Yeltri said. It was bred in captivity, but its species is highly sensitive to environmental cues. It's been unresponsive for 2 cycles. Nolan looked from the creature to her. And you called me because... She gestured toward Brutus. Because it won't respond to any of us. It hides, refuses food. But when your dog attacked the cryophage, it watched, and for the first time, it perked its ears. It hasn't even done that with its own caretakers. You want to see if Brutus can reach it? Not just reach it, help us understand if it's reacting to something we've missed. Nolan looked down at Brutus. What do you think, buddy? Want to make a new friend? Brutus sniffed the enclosure wall, then sat. Yeltri activated the access panel and a small gate opened with a hiss. The glasson didn't move at first. Then, slowly, it padded forward, watching Brutus with cautious interest. Brutus lay down, head resting on his paws. The glasson crept closer. After several long seconds, it touched its snout to Brutus's shoulder. Brutus didn't flinch. The glasson sat. Yeltran's mouth twitched. That's more than it's done in weeks. Maybe he smells like adventure, Nolan said. Or maybe it recognizes something in him, a kind of stability. Brutus yawned. The glasson mimicked the motion. Okay, that's weird, Nolan said. Over the next hour, the glasson followed Brutus around the enclosure, matching his pace. When Brutus sat, it sat. When Brutus scratched behind his ear, the glasson pawed its own head awkwardly. Behavioral mimicry, Yeltri said, watching the monitors. That's rare outside of imprinting species. Brutus licked the glasson's face once. It blinked, then rolled onto its side. All right, Nolan said. Now they're just showing off. When the session ended, Brutus walked out calmly, tail swaying. The glasson remained by the gate, ears twitching. Yeltri closed the panel and turned toward Nolan. Would you consider bringing Brutus in regularly? We could classify it as therapeutic cross-species engagement. Nolan looked down at the dog. He doesn't seem to mind. Brutus sneezed and trotted toward the exit. As they walked back toward their housing unit, Nolan's comm chirped again. This time the ID read, Deputy Commander Harnex. He sighed and answered. Graye, you've been observed entering restricted medical annexes. Explain. I was invited. Ask medical. A pause. Then, you are now scheduled for a protocol review tomorrow at third cycle. Bring your canine. Why? Because he's now considered an interspecies liaison. Nolan blinked. You're joking. No. The line went dead. Brutus looked up at him with what Nolan swore was the closest thing to a shrug a dog could manage. In the morning they arrived at the review chamber where a semicircle of officials sat behind raised consoles. Harnack stood in the center, his expression unreadable. The issue is not disciplinary, he said. It is procedural. Your dog now qualifies as an active participant in interspecies behavioral studies. This must be formalized. One of the officials, a leathery being with vertical pupils, leaned forward. We've seen the footage. The glassin mirrored the canine's behavior. We can't ignore that. Nolan scratched his jaw. So, what does this mean? He gets a desk job? Harnack ignored the comment. It means he will be granted provisional status as a nonverbal cultural interface, under your supervision. He's not a diplomat, he's a dog. And yet, said the official, he's succeeded where 6 trained xenopsychologists failed. Nolan looked down at Brutus. The dog sat patiently, looking around the chamber with mild curiosity. If I agree, Nolan said, he stays with me. No labs, no isolation. He's not a tool. Agreed, Harnack said, but you'll be expected to report to the Behavioral Integration Office weekly. Fine, but I'm not wearing a tie. Brutus barked once, as if in support. As they left the chamber, Nolan rubbed Brutus's head. Looks like you've got a job now, pal. Brutus wagged his tail once, then trotted ahead, badge glinting in the corridor lights.